Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. That was a very kind introduction. And thank you, Dean, for having me. Thank you guys all for coming, and thank you for the Clinton School. Just an amazing place. You guys are the ones that are changing the world, and it's an exciting place to be. You know, my path to coming to the Clinton School is actually part due to Adam Moreland, which I think some of you guys probably know as a student here. Adam and I were actually classmates in West Virginia. We grew up in a state that had a bit of an identity crisis. Do we have any West Virginians in the audience? Not very many of us leave, I guess. Well, basically, West Virginia is known for the coal industry, mountaintop removal, and underground mining. In contrast, we're also known as one of the most beautiful states as far as aesthetically, the parks and the recreation that we offer. People come worldwide to participate. Socially and economically, West Virginia is on two different ends of the spectrum as well. One hand, we're known for the Greenbrier, where presidents vacation and foreign dignitaries come. It actually used to house the underground bunker, nuclear bunker for Washington during the Cold War. And now there's actually a casino under the front lawn. It opened last summer, so it's kind of cool. But less than 100 miles away from here is one of the poorest counties in the nation. And West Virginia struggles with poverty. We're always in the top three, and I know Arkansas is one of the states as well that has the same issues in Mississippi, but we're always trading places, and it's a very contrasting identity. You know, I think growing up in this state impacted me in a lot of ways. I can remember going to school, driving to school on the same school bus as kids that you know, came from middle-class families, parents had jobs, had plenty of food to eat. Across the row, a kid whose parents were unemployed, literally their food was provided strictly through hunting year-round. I mean, no joke. I can remember being in the outdoors pretty much my whole life, and you know, I can remember not being able to swim in certain streams or fish in certain areas due to acid mine drainage. I actually got a skin infection when I was a kid for swimming in the Monongahela River because of all the pollution that was in the water. So I think just these ideas really kind of shaped me as a person and kind of shaped the business model that became SustainU. So a lot of you are probably asking, so how did you get into making clothes? And it is a kind of an interesting, kind of a funny story too. So we'll start here and we'll see where it goes. Back when I was a kid, I grew up with sticks. We had two channels for television, and both were fuzzy. You couldn't watch TV unless you rented a movie, and you had to go into town to rent a movie, which was about 30 minutes away. So my brother and I, all we did was play outside, and it actually worked to my advantage because I was able to get fast, and my brother used to beat me up a lot, so it made me tough. And I was able to get a scholarship to Notre Dame to play football. I actually chose Notre Dame over West Virginia, which I have not yet lived down in my home state. Yura is a very catchy last name, or easy last name to think of catchy phrases to make fun of. So I had to get used to that, you know, in high school and then in college. But at Notre Dame, I was actually a fullback. I don't look anything like that now. I'm almost 230 pounds. So, but you know, it was just a great opportunity. I led it all 4 years. I played as a true freshman, and one thing I can remember more than anything is my first game in Notre Dame Stadium, and just having touchdown Jesus in my back. You know, I'm just in another level. I'm actually going to play in the game too, which is even scarier. I'm like 18 years old, and you know, I'm like have this anxiety of like, oh, I don't want to mess up, and also mixed with this anxiety of like I don't want to trip either. You know, because everybody's coming out of that tunnel together. And so like I can remember like just like don't trip, and you know, sure enough I didn't trip, thank goodness. But it does happen. So if you guys are ever watching college football games, you'll see one or two guys trip. But when I came out, I just remember seeing this sea of green just in the corner, our student section, and just going crazy. And Notre Dame, like a lot of schools I'm sure you guys have gone to, has a really strong student body, and the way that Notre Dame shows it is through their apparel. The student section at Notre Dame will stay to the end, even if we're losing, and they'll always sing the fight song, and they never sit down. And it really unites our campus. It's also a good alumni identifier when you're out of school. Like, I can point people out that were like different classes based on the shirts that they're wearing. So it's like a Where's Waldo kind of Notre Dame graduate thing. But from football to fashion, that's an interesting jump. So you can laugh at that picture, please feel free. I do too. I did when it came out. I thought I wanted to be a strength coach when I graduated college. So my strength coach in college recommended I go for a year and get experience in Florida, and before I went back to get my master's. So I went and worked at the Four Seasons, the Sports Club LA is what it's called, the gym. And they were opening this gym. So the photographer was there, and he asked me, would you take a picture in a tuxedo with a weight? And I said, yeah, okay. I'm thinking it's going to be like a little thumbnail picture somewhere, nowhere, but ended up being like on the cover of something, Miami Herald. And so anyways, from this picture, believe it or not, I got scouted to be a model. I don't know how. It doesn't really look that good. But before I knew it, I lost about 65 pounds over 2 years. Lived in Milan and Munich, and New York City was my home base, and did modeling for a full-time job. I was with Ford Models in New York. And one of the best things, and actually kind of one of the insulting things about being a model, is that people just don't assume that you have a brain. So, which I can't say isn't, some of my colleagues maybe, I'm not going to say everybody's, got a 4.0, but for me, this transition, I just, I prayed about it. I was like, why am I modeling? Like, what am I doing? And I just really had a hard time with it. I knew it had to be for something else, some other reason. And like I said, one of the good things is that they don't really think you have a brain, so they'll bring you in the meetings and just talk about the marketing strategies, the spinning, the knitting, where they're getting their fabrics from, how they're doing this, how they're doing that. So I just absorbed it all. I just stood, well, actually I didn't, I did stand because you're modeling clothes. But I just stand there in these meetings, with big companies, and just as they talk about these strategies. And for me, it was really, it was really eye-opening because I started learning about some of the inconsistencies in the fashion industry, especially because my career in modeling coincided with a push for green products. And so during this push, you started seeing a lot of things that weren't accurate. And I'll try to give you some examples of what I meant by that. Like, you don't have to actually make something in America to say it's made in America. It just has to be knit here. The fabric just has to be knit here. And the reason why it has to be knit here, it isn't because we want to keep jobs here, it's because the knitting in the south region of the United States is actually the cheapest uninterrupted electricity in the world. And you have to have that for knitting machines, because if you get an interruption, you'll get a spot in your fabric. So basically, you can knit stuff here, ship it anywhere over the world, and you can call it made in America, which is really crazy. I didn't know that. The other thing too is that you don't have to have all the content be what it says it is. I know it's confusing to say, but like, you can call something 100% recycled and it only be 20% recycled. You can call something 100% organic and it only has to be 24% organic. And that was just like, people are actually spending money on something they think is a solution when it's really a problem. The other thing with the organic, the majority of organic cotton is made in China and India. It's less than 1% of the market, and it's in 2 regions of the world where there's a lot of water stress. It takes 713 gallons of water to make one cotton shirt. And that's a lot of water for one shirt, either conventional or organic. So basically, all these ideas, I want to do something. And basically, I started thinking, like, what can I do? And I really started looking back on my life experiences and thinking about, how growing up in West Virginia, Notre Dame, fashion industry, how does this all come together? And I really wanted to create something that was authentic, because I started thinking back on those Notre Dame shirts, and I started thinking to myself, if those shirts didn't just stand for a football staple, if they stood for an ideal that could really spark this generation and really define it, that'd be something. And I think that the students would be behind it. And I think that all campuses, the students would be behind it. And so I did about 2 years of research, a lot of cold phone calls, a lot of non-calls back too. But at the end, I actually ended up learning what I needed to know to launch the business. And so basically that's how SustainU was born. And now I'm going to show you a couple of videos to show you how SustainU is different. There we go. Basically, that's the process of making recycled fiber into yarn. That's who we use to make our fiber. As you can see, there's a name with that. It's not just somebody. It's a person. And what we've done as a business is we really want to build relationships with our virtual partnerships. It matters to us. We really care about how they're doing. They care about how we're doing, because really at the end of the day, it's all affected. We all are affected by the same issues. So that company and another company that we buy our actual yarn from, they're only about 20 miles away from where we actually get stuff knit, and which really cuts down on the transportation, which also cuts down on the cost for us. So the next video is going to be about knitting. Basically, you saw there the process in which we knit our yarn into fabric. The interesting thing about Tracy and that company, 10 years ago, or I guess 15 years ago, when all the textile companies were going overseas, they stayed in North Carolina. And the reason why they stayed was because, one, they had a deal with the penitentiaries in the state where they made their sweatshirts so they could actually keep in operation. But what they did was that they devoted 80% of the factory to making prison uniforms, and then the other 20% to product development of recycled fibers, how to knit them, because that's really the key. I mean, being able to knit something and make it feel good, it's really a challenge. And these guys are really in a small town in North Carolina, and they are the best recycled knitters in the world. And it's only 20 miles away from where we actually spin our yarn too. And it's amazing, the innovation and the art behind these processes that for me was really a revelation when I started to understand them. But then from just looking forward for what we have as an advantage in America, people like that really spend time with product development and get it right. And they have something to offer that nobody else does. It is such an advantage for us as a business and then for us as a country. The next part is the cutting and sewing. Business is actually the toughest. And there are a lot of people who have ever talked to anybody who works in the fashion industry or knows somebody who's trying to start a clothing line. They'll tell you the hardest part is to get things cut and sewn in the United States and still be price competitive. When we started SustainU, Carol, actually, she's the manager of this facility, and she's a tough lady. I tell you what, I was actually at the end putting the heat transfer on. That's actually me, and I literally did that for the first 3 months I was at the factory. Like, I would get out and put on the heat transfers. That was like all I was really good for because I didn't know how to sew. But it was 3 people in the factory when we started to do our first project, and now that factory has 21 full-time employees, and that's 18 people who came off government assistance to work. And these are people that have the skill sets, they've done it their whole lives, and it's just a matter of giving them the opportunity to do that. Funny thing too is if you ever go to our Facebook page and you see comments, you'll see a lot from Carol. And that's Carol, who it is. But it's funny, she didn't know how to use a computer until we started working together. She had never used a computer in life, and we needed her to start using it for UPS shipments and other things, and now she's on Facebook. And everything, you'll notice, everything's commented. Carol comments on everything, so it's encouraging. The last process in our 4 steps here is the embellishment. So that was the embellishment or printing side of our business, which I think is a really cool story that really kind of sums everything up. Wendy and Philip, their business in the beginning was using strictly plastisol inks for every customer that they used. That facility is located 20 miles from our cut and sew facility. So we're keeping everything within this little distance and employing these small businesses. But when we first came to them, we said, the one thing is that we need to have phthalate-free and PVC-free inks printed on this. And their answer is, well, show us the business and we'll convert. And so we were able to show them the business, and they were able to convert totally to these inks. So not only are we getting PVC and phthalate-free ink, but so is every other customer who goes to that printer. it's basically showing how green can work. And I think that's the biggest challenge. It's showing America how can green work. I know coming from West Virginia, working in North Carolina, green to those people really, and to a lot of people, they're not really sure what that means. How does that affect my life besides the global warming and some of these factors? How can it get me a job? And I think that showing people that it can be successful and you can get a job and we can grow businesses here that are sustainable is encouraging. I mean, these people are now part of a green movement, which, a year and a half ago they weren't. And now they're buying in and they've really put their heart into it, as we have as a business. So, I think the one good thing, a lot of good things, but one thing I really take away from the experience I've had in the last year is that, don't let people tell you no. I don't know. I got told no a lot whenever I've had this idea. Everybody said you can't do that. You can't be price competitive. You can't be this. You can't be that. You gotta charge through it. And I know you guys will, and you guys are leaders of tomorrow. But just don't take no for an answer. And I appreciate you guys coming out. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Chris. We do have time for some questions. If you raise your hand, we'll get a microphone to you. Chris, will you talk about kind of the growth in the past year?
Oh, yeah. We started with one school, one license, and now we have officially 50 licenses now, but technically we have more than that. But we've signed contracts with 50 schools. So in a year and 3 months, we've grown 50 times in licensing. We're the first company ever to get a standard license in college apparel in less than a year. So we did it in 6 months. So. Yeah, absolutely. We started with just T-shirts. That was the first fabric that we had. But then we spent the first 6 months just doing product development, and we have about 26 styles now, from fleece to polos to pretty much anything. We can make it now. We have the fabric to make it.
Right here.
Have you heard from other clothing companies that sort of see your business model and say, okay, this guy's really starting to make some money, and sort of seeing some change across the fashion industry?
I think that not necessarily companies. I've been approached by a few companies that are major outdoor companies to private label some of their goods because they want to have the same story. So for us, that's great because it just keeps people working. And that's really the goal here is to affect people's lives positively. And the sustainability, that's part of it. So as far as a shift, I have seen a shift in transparency. Once things kind of get out, there's a company that they kind of fully became transparent on their website, and it was great that they would do that, but unfortunately they lost a lot of customers because of it, and we've had a lot of people switch to our brand because of that one company's decision to do that, which I think is gutsy for them to do, but I think it also shows that people do care, and so it kind of verifies that they do care where things come from and what they're made out of.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I'm Kim Caldwell, classmate of Adam Moreland.
All right.
Heard a lot about you. You know Adam, so I heard it loudly. And I'm curious to hear what your vision is for the company and where you see this going long term.
Yeah, pretty much we're growing at a pretty good rate here. And what I'd like to see is us continue to grow this business model in North Carolina to the point where we can really have a sustainable factory set up where our virtual partners stay virtual and it's virtually integrated in a way so that we're allowing them to be separate businesses so they have their own customers, but also encompassing a holistic work view where it involves wellness, a Head Start program, health and diet, because a lot of the issues that happen in Appalachia and through the South have to do with some of those issues, and we want to really emphasize that in our business model as well, not just making clothes, but caring about the people who work for us or with us. So that's the goal for the years to come, is to continue to grow the business, but also really develop those relationships.
Hi, I'm Hallie Schaffner. I'm also one of Adam Moreland's classmates. My question's about marketing. How are you getting the message about SustainU out there? Has it been, I can imagine it'd be easy. It's something that our generation is really is into right now. And have you relied on the internet a lot?
Yeah, that's our biggest, viral marketing is key. Facebook and meeting with SGAs and sustainability directors. Last year, our biggest jump came from the ASHE conference, which is where the sustainability directors of universities gather each year, and it was in September of last year. And then once we were there, there was a lot of students there as well, and it's like, well, we want that on our campus, and that's how we kind of get started on this fast track. And so it has been almost word of mouth in that industry as far as sustainability directors are concerned, but we've been doing grassroots marketing at campuses with campus ambassadors. We're doing a nationwide clothing drive in February. We call it One Shirt Campaign with Goodwill, and we're going to try to get as many campuses involved in that as possible, and it's just trying to raise awareness for people's clothing needs, and also the fact that Goodwill actually recycles the clothing that they don't use. And I think it's a great idea of sustainability in itself. So the marketing is mainly viral, but I showed some students earlier, we have these seed cards, which I love, and they're really cool. But instead of flyers like on campuses, we pass out these cards, and they're made of wildflower seeds. And basically you can plant it, and it'll grow. 90% of the seeds germinate. So we have little different tactics like that this is something different. So I have them in my pocket, so if anybody wants one.
Chris, who is that band in the songs? Is that a local band in North Carolina, or is that national?
Actually, that's I think that's from my stock. we bought the right stock.
Over there.
Hi. I know. I remember.
My question, you mentioned the new generation of the fashion movement and the promotional videos. You've also clearly mentioned some partnerships you've made. What is the reaction? Have you gotten other informal partnerships going on with your fashion model past and with other sustainable businesses? Have you started a coalition of other organizations doing this or been involved in it?
I think we've looked around to see like where is this applicable, and what is this cause kind of applicable with. So we've looked into some nonprofits too to partner with. I think I mentioned one, Yura International, which does sustainable development in countries, and the guy happens to be from West Virginia too, who started that. But that's not really the reason why I partner with him. But it's just a funny fact. But we definitely are looking for partnerships in that direction. In the industry itself, when we can start private labeling other brands, that's great for us. Like I mentioned, I think it's a story that should be told through other companies, and they want to tell it. It's just giving them the outlets to do it. So we're pretty much paving the way, a strategy of how they can do it. And like I said, the growth of us means the growth of all the virtual partners too. So it means more jobs.
Hey, Chris. Have you thought about your own retail outlet? Anything? Do you have any?
I think that right now we're going to rely on distribution. We've been approached by a few major national distributors for fall of next year. So for now, I think we're going to rely on that, but that might change over time, and we might end up doing a retail outlet or at least online sales.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm also a clinical student. This is kind of going off Julianne's question. Have you looked, beyond fashion, have you looked at other business models, such as Tom's Shoes, as Dean Rutherford mentioned, or other for-profit organizations that have a social responsibility component to model your organization off of?
Tom's Shoes is a great business model. Ours is just a little bit different, a different model, but it's a similar purpose. We're trying to affect people's lives. In building this business model, it was really, the importance for me was that I wanted to use 100% recycled fabric because I really researched sustainable textiles and everything as it evolved. I started with maybe bamboo being the fabric, or maybe, organic cotton being the fabric. And, as I did more research, I really settled on recycled materials because it requires zero virgin growth. Whereas, a cotton shirt takes a lot of water, and polyester is made out of actual petroleum. So, my business model kind of evolved from the fabric that I could get, where I could get it, and then looking around from there and saying, who can we connect into it? And it just was, it was purpose-driven, I think, because it happened to be that 20 miles down the road, there's this, and then 20 miles down the road, there's this, and it just was kind of set up that way. That was the vision from the beginning, but, once I got that one piece, the puzzle started coming together.
Right here. 1 second.
It sounds like you're working primarily with big schools and maybe outdoor outfitters. Do you also have a setup where you can work with smaller retailers?
Yeah, absolutely. We've worked with small schools, small retailers. We've done 35 shirt orders. We've done 3,500 shirt orders. We want to service everybody. So, okay, I'll save one for you.
Anyone else? Over in the back.
Hi.
I'm glad that you're doing this.
Thank you.
I went to a school in Northeast where I battled with administration over how they put their athletes and how they source their college apparel. I'm very happy that you're doing this.
Thank you.
I thought it was ridiculous. They were charging them $35,000 a year and it's not a special product.
Yeah.
Are you making much inroads into how schools are closing their athletes?
That's.
And I can't believe it. You really have no control over that.
Yeah.
Field
Yeah, it's a shoe. The shoe contracts really control that market, and every school has that, company that really controls that market. So instead of going after that, we were going after the low-hanging fruit, the stuff that isn't the shoe contract involved. And eventually, my thoughts are that it will evolve into that because it's student-driven. And students who go to universities will start, as they have already in little areas, in bigger areas, start demanding transparency and a better product or something that they can really stand behind for their athletes, because it is something that we've been asked. And actually, there's some schools that are willing to switch over, smaller schools, but the larger schools, they get paid so much money for the contracts. It's not really, at this point, something they're looking at, but I see it happening. I just think it's got to be an evolution, and it's got to start from the students that go to the universities.
Other one? Yeah.
Do you have any venues in? We actually, we don't have any venues yet, but we have licensing rights in Arkansas. So we will, within the year, have Razorback gear. So.
And Chris, how are the Razorbacks going to do this year?
They're going to do awesome. They're going to beat the Irish. Well, they don't play, though.
As long as they don't play.
They would if they played.
Right here.
Hi, my name is Anna.
Hi.
Right now everybody has an avenue to recycle their plastics, their paper, etc. But do you see an avenue being developed for people to recycle the clothing, since it's such a huge market and we consume so much of it?
Yeah.
Do you see the potential for that developing eventually?
Absolutely, and it's already being developed. In Teijin, Japan, they have a facility there that can recycle polyester into polyester. Patagonia uses it for their fleece. They actually recycle it in Teijin. That can be here too. We just have to get the demand high enough. But they've really pioneered that, and so I think that absolutely the clothing would be, because each American, statistically, we throw away 68 pounds of clothes a year. I mean, that's a lot. It goes in the landfills, and so yeah, I think that it definitely can be, because people have pioneered it and the technology is there. So it's definitely something that we can do.
Well, thank you, Chris. Oh, Joey, sorry.
Hi, Julie.
I'm at the school of London. I'm working with fashion design and women's politics and technical.
Oh, cool.
Trying to be creative, challenging. I'm concerned about our felting with the dyes going into the ground bottom and the factory dyes affecting the water. So I'm interested in your embellishment shift from using the non-bleeding chemicals.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that. If it just analyze it from a business model and a profit margin?
Yeah.
How can I coach them to make the change?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing was I was, thinking about all these, how is this going to work, selling this product that, at first we started with just a recycled plastic bottle, which essentially is petroleum. A half a gallon of gasoline goes in, per pound of yarn goes into these shirts. So the virgin side, we save a half a gallon, I guess, to be more clear. But, I couldn't really, in my right mind, put then a petroleum-based embellishment onto that. It's like kind of counterproductive. So just understanding what it was made out of, and I really wanted to try to find an alternative that would go on polyester, because that's the hardest thing really to embellish. It was really kind of just a challenge to find it, but people have been doing it for years. It has just become pretty reasonable price-wise, that it's not that much of a difference, and the setup is actually very similar, so they're not having to change equipment. Where like as a water-based ink, you'd have to, it's a mess or clean up. With this kind of ink, it's pretty much the same as using a plastisol ink, except for it's phthalate-free and PVC-free. But it really isn't any more expensive. So we haven't really had to pay much more for it, and they haven't either. And we use enough of it too that it really it makes a difference for them.
Thank you, Chris, for coming back to Little Rock. We'll have you again, I guess, next year in your annual visit. Thank all y'all for coming out.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.